My name is Pierce, though by now I've grown used to hearing it as if it belongs to someone else. The city of Dartmouth has a way of doing that, making you feel like you've stepped into someone else's skin and forgotten where your own began. It started with a phone call I almost ignored. Detective Pierce? The woman's voice was thin, trembling but formal, like she'd practiced the words before dialing. This is Amelia Rook. I'm calling from the Museum of Modern Studies. Something's happened to one of our exhibits. I remember thinking that something usually meant vandalism, or theft, or a board of trustees trying to bury a scandal under a fresh coat of paint. But her voice lingered on the line just long enough for me to hear the fear beneath her professionalism. What kind of exhibit? I asked. There was a pause. Then, a painting. One of Calder's. That made me sit up. Harlan Calder. The painter of silence himself. The museum stood near the river, an old brick building with modern glass wings stitched to its sides like prosthetics. Rain slicked the pavement outside, pooling beneath the street lamps. Inside, the air was too clean, too still. Every sound echoed longer than it should have. Amelia met me in the central gallery. She was young, mid-30s maybe, with the exhausted posture of someone who hadn't slept in days. It was part of our retrospective, she explained as we walked. Calder's late works. He disappeared in 1985. No one ever found him, or the originals. But a private collector donated one last month. It arrived intact. She hesitated before that last word, and I knew what was coming wouldn't be simple. We turned a corner into a small room lined with soundproofing foam. Inside, only one painting hung, a large canvas, 6 feet wide, dominating the wall. It was abstract, but not chaotic, a swirl of muted colors, layered brushstrokes spiraling toward a dark center. And the silence. It wasn't natural. It pressed against my ears, thick and physical, as if the air itself had been muffled. I could hear the hum of the lights in the hall, the squeak of my shoes when I stepped back out, but inside the room, everything died. No breath, no heartbeat, no sound of fabric brushing as I moved. Everyone who's entered this room reports the same thing, Amelia said quietly. Complete silence. No recording devices work in here either. And, she swallowed, the painting keeps changing. I turned to her. Changing how? She nodded toward the bottom corner. Yesterday, that section was blank. I stepped closer. In the lower left, faint outlines had begun to form, shapes that looked disturbingly like human hands pressed against the canvas from the inside. I spent the next hour examining the room, trying to convince myself it was some elaborate sensory illusion. No hidden speakers, no magnetic panels, no ultrasonic generators. The silence wasn't mechanical, it was environmental. Like the painting itself had devoured the air around it. Amelia lingered by the doorway. You know, they used to call Calder a medium, she said. He believed paintings could capture more than light. That sound, emotion, even presence could be fixed in pigment. Sounds like the kind of thing that sells well in interviews, I muttered. She smiled faintly. Maybe. But the thing is, he only painted in complete silence. Claimed he couldn't hear his own heartbeat while working. I looked at the canvas again, at the spiraling brushwork pulling my gaze inward. The deeper I stared, the more it felt like it was breathing, slow, deliberate, in rhythm with something far away. A cold prickle crawled up my neck. What happened to him? I asked. No one knows. His studio burned down the night he finished his last piece. He vanished before the fire brigade arrived. Some people said his final painting was cursed. Others said it was alive. I nodded slowly. And this one? Amelia exhaled. It's titled Stillness Number 13. Back in my car, the rain had turned to mist. The museum lights shimmered in the fog, blurred and distant. I pulled out my notebook and wrote the name down. Stillness Number 13. Something about that number bothered me. There were 12 known stillness paintings, portraits, landscapes, abstract forms, but all of them were said to have been destroyed. If this was truly the 13th, it wasn't just a lost piece. It was an impossible one. I flipped through old notes from previous cases, patterns of vanishing, locations where reality seemed to bend around a fixed point. The cartographer's rest had taught me that certain things didn't end when you left them behind. They waited. And sometimes, they sent invitations. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You shouldn't have looked at it. HC. The initials hit me like a cold slap. Harlan Calder. Dead since 1985. Or maybe not. That night, I dreamed of silence. I stood in the gallery again, alone. The painting pulsed faintly, the brushstrokes shifting like waves beneath glass. The hands in the lower corner moved now, fingers stretching outward, reaching toward me. When they touched the frame, the silence cracked like ice. A low hum filled the room, rising to a single note so deep it felt like my bones were vibrating. I woke with my ears ringing and the faint smell of oil paint on my hands. Outside, the world was perfectly still. Not quiet, still, No wind. No insects. No distant hum of traffic. And in the reflection of the window, for just a second, I saw the gallery behind me. The painting glowed faintly, waiting. I didn't need to check my notebook to know what the next line would be. The silence has begun to spread. By morning, the city had gone gray. Not cloudy, gray star. The kind of color that seeps into everything and leaves the world without edges. I drove back to the museum before sunrise, hoping to find Amelia. The glass doors were still locked, but someone had taped a handwritten note to the inside. It said simply, "Closed until further notice." No date. No signature. I circled around to the staff entrance, used the universal key I shouldn't have, and stepped inside. The halls were darker than before. No hum of the HVAC, no creak of old wood expanding in the cold. Just that same dense, swallowing silence. The room with Calder's painting was sealed now, plastic sheeting stapled across the doorway, warning labels slapped on haphazardly, "Conservation in progress, do not enter." Through a tear in the plastic, I saw the edge of the frame. The painting wasn't hanging anymore. It was leaning against the wall, half-shrouded in cloth. Even from here, I could feel the quiet radiating off it, like standing next to an open freezer. And under the sheet, something moved. I found Amelia in the restoration lab, sitting on the floor beside a stack of boxes. Her eyes were red. She didn't seem surprised to see me. "They told me to lock it down," she said softly. "The board wants to ship it to a private facility. Some of them think it's toxic, psychologically, maybe physically." I crouched beside her. "You've been here all night?" She nodded. I tried to record it again. With analog equipment this time. When I played the tape back, she swallowed. It wasn't empty. There was sound. But not ours. "What kind of sound?" "Voices," she whispered. "Whispering. Not words, not exactly. Like they were trying to remember how to speak." She opened her hand. Inside lay a small cassette tape, label smudged by fingerprints. I took it and slipped it into my coat pocket without listening. "Not yet." "Amelia," I said quietly. "Who donated the painting?" She hesitated. "The paperwork lists a name. Lawrence Ashby. But the signature looked wrong." Like someone had copied it from a different document. I'd heard the name before. Ashby had been Calder's last apprentice before the fire. Where is he now? Her eyes flicked to the window. That's the other thing, she said. He came here 3 days ago. Said he just wanted to see it again. I didn't think much of it. But now he's missing, I finished. She nodded. Ashby's address led me to the northern edge of Darsmouth, where the city dissolves into river fog and abandoned mills. The house was small, 2 stories, its paint peeled to bare wood. A window on the 2nd floor had been shattered inward. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled of turpentine and mildew. Canvas scraps hung from the walls like molting skin. On every surface, desks, floorboards, even the mirror, someone had drawn spirals of gray paint. Not brushwork, finger trails, as if done in a trance. And at the center of the living room stood an easel. The canvas on it was blank. But as I moved closer, faint ridges appeared across its surface, like veins beneath thin skin. The same pattern as Calder's Stillness No. 13. Beside it lay a chair. And on the chair, a tape recorder. I pressed play. Static. Then a man's voice, breathless, frantic. It listens. You think silence is absence, but it's a shape, pressure pressing inward. Calder found a way to hold it. To paint it. But he didn't make it, he invited it. Every time you look at his work, it remembers your voice. That's why it changes. It's not evolving. It's collecting. And when it's full, it paints back. The tape clicked off. Something creaked behind me. A door upstairs. I drew my flashlight and took the stairs slowly. Each step gave a muffled thump, like walking through snow. The silence here wasn't total, it had texture, a faint vibration beneath it. The sound of something holding its breath. The 2nd floor was darker than it should have been. My beam caught the walls, every inch covered in sketches. Faces, hundreds of them, drawn in charcoal. The same face over and over again. Calder's. At the end of the hall, a door was ajar. I pushed it open. The room was a studio, or what was left of one. Canvases stacked like tombstones, brushes floating in jars of blackened water. And in the corner, someone sitting with their back to me. Mr. Ashby? I said. No response. I stepped closer, the beam of my flashlight catching his shoulder. His clothes were stiff with dried paint. His hand moved slightly, dragging a brush across a smaller canvas propped in his lap. Mr. Ashby, I need you too. He turned. His eyes were open, but his expression was empty. Mouth slack, movements mechanical. The brush in his hand wasn't painting. It was erasing, scraping pigment off the canvas until it showed pale beneath. Only it wasn't paint coming away. It was sound. The faint hum of the flashlight, my breath, even the creak of the floorboards. Each noise vanished as the brush scraped. The air thickened, heavier, until all I could hear was my heartbeat. Then that, too, went silent. I tried to move, but it felt like the world had congealed around me. The brush stopped. Ashby's eyes lifted to mine, pupils dilated and colorless. Do you hear it? He whispered. I shook my head. He smiled faintly. Good. That means it's listening. When I blinked, he was gone. Just the empty chair, the brush lying across the floor. I stumbled downstairs, lungs burning from holding air that didn't exist. Outside, the fog had thickened into a wall. No birds, no cars, no city hum, just the faint tremor of something vast and patient beneath the silence. I reached my car and sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my hands stopped shaking. Then I remembered the tape Amelia had given me. I pulled it out and slid it into the player. At first, nothing. Then faint whispering, like voices underwater. And beneath them, a slow, deliberate breath. Not on the tape. Behind me. I turned toward the passenger seat. The cassette player stopped. And from the rearview mirror, something in the fog moved closer to the car, shapeless, gray, and breathing in rhythm with my pulse. I turned the key. The engine made no sound at all. The city began to lose its voice. At first it was subtle, distant sirens fading too quickly, the low hum of traffic dropping out like someone had muted the world in pieces. But by the end of the week, I realized it wasn't the city that had gone quiet. It was me. I'd replay voicemail messages and hear nothing. The kettle would whistle, but only in my memory. And yet the silence wasn't empty. It carried a faint, rhythmic pulse, like breath behind glass. I didn't tell Amelia. She'd already stopped answering my calls. Instead, I turned to Calder's past. His studio had been rebuilt after the fire, converted into a storage facility on the outskirts of Dartmouth. The curator at City Archives granted me access, though she warned me that most of Calder's personal effects had been destroyed. Destroyed or removed? I asked. Her eyes flickered. That depends who you ask. The studio was a long, narrow structure of warped planks and rusted metal beams. The sign outside still bore Calder's initials, HC, half obscured by soot. Inside, dust coated everything, but beneath it lay the ghost of something meticulous: easel racks, light stands, a phonograph in the corner. I found a wooden chest beneath a tarp. Inside, stacks of black and white photographs. Every one of them showed the same subject, an empty room with a canvas in the center, always shot from a different angle, always faintly blurred. And in each photo, if you stared long enough, you could see something moving behind the blur. A face? A hand? A reflection? Among the photos lay a spool of film marked in red ink, Session 47, 1985. The projector in the corner still worked after some coaxing. I threaded the reel and dimmed the lights. The footage began with static, then a slow pan of Calder's studio, identical to where I stood now, though cleaner, alive. The camera settled on the artist himself. He was middle-aged, hair streaked with gray, eyes ringed with exhaustion. His hands trembled as he held his brush. "Every color is a sound," Calder's voice said, barely audible through the film's hiss. "And every silence, every pause, is a doorway. You don't paint the image. You paint what it remembers." He turned toward the camera, and for an instant, his gaze met mine. Not through the lens, asterisk through the film star. The lights in the studio flickered. The air grew heavy, and that same pressure, the one I'd felt in the museum, began to close around me. On screen, Calder lifted his brush and made a single stroke. The canvas seemed to sink under it, like a pond touched by rain. And from somewhere beyond the camera came a faint whisper. "Stillness, listens." Then the film snapped. The reel spun loose, scattering frames across the floor. I reached for the switch, but the projector was still running, light spilling across the wall though no film remained. And in that light, faint and pulsing, something else appeared. A second canvas. My own silhouette standing before it. And behind my silhouette, another shape taller, reaching out. I killed the power. When I left, the night air was too quiet even for crickets. I stood on the steps and forced myself to breathe. Back at my apartment, I tried to write a report, but every attempt dissolved into half-finished sentences. The words wouldn't stay. Each time I read them, they shifted slightly, letters vanishing, phrases mutating into others. It was as though the silence had learned how to write. Near midnight, I heard a knock at my door. 3 short taps, one long. I froze. The same pattern I'd heard on the museum's locked gallery door 2 nights before. When I opened it, no one was there. Only a small parcel on the floor. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, lay a photograph. It showed me, sitting at my desk. The same shirt, same angle, taken within the last few minutes. And in the background, the window reflected someone standing behind me. Calder. Or something wearing his shape. I didn't sleep that night. The silence in my apartment grew denser until it vibrated against my ribs. By dawn, the world outside had thinned into pale motion, a film reel without sound. And in that soundless light, a figure stood across the street, unmoving. A man in a paint-stained coat, holding a brush. When I blinked, he was gone. But the air he left behind still pulsed with something alive. Something that was learning to breathe in my stead. It was then I realized, Calder's silence wasn't spreading. It was teaching me how to hear it. By the time I found Amelia again, she was hiding in the old botanical conservatory, the one on the riverbank, where the glass roof had caved in and ivy grew through the cracks. I had followed her notebook entries, scattered and incomplete, each one ending mid-sentence as though the pen had simply given up. She didn't seem startled when I entered. "Pierce," she said quietly. "I thought you'd stopped hearing me." Her voice sounded distant, as if I were listening from underwater. "I nearly did," I said. "What are you doing here?" She gestured toward the center of the room. There, propped against a cracked fountain, stood a blank canvas. Its surface shimmered faintly, rippling when we spoke. "It's not blank," she said. "It's listening." I took a step closer. The air changed, cool, compressed, vibrating through my teeth. The silence here wasn't absence, it was shape. It had mass. "Calder called it the still place," she continued. "He said it was where sound goes when it's forgotten." I looked at her. "And you think it's growing?" She nodded. "When I was in the museum, before it closed completely, I saw something in the painting. A corridor. Long and gray, with no end. Every time someone looked at it, it stretched further. The curator's gone now. Everyone who worked in that wing vanished, one by one." Her eyes found mine. "I think it's not just taking sound anymore, Pierce. It's taking space." The tape from Ashby's house had begun to degrade, but I brought it with me anyway. We played it on an old reel-to-reel player Amelia scavenged from storage. The whispers came slower this time, less like language, more like breath shaping into syllables. "We hear you." The canvas rippled. Its surface deepened like a reflection on dark water. "Do you hear it?" I whispered. She nodded. "It's close." The temperature dropped. Somewhere in the building, glass cracked softly. Then came a single footstep, wet, deliberate, echoing across stone. We both turned. Through the greenhouse's fogged glass, a figure moved along the outside path. For an instant, I thought it was Ashby. Then it stopped and lifted its head. Its face was colorless, features smeared like half-dried paint. In one hand, it held a brush that dripped something darker than ink. Amelia backed away. "It's using him." The figure pressed a hand against the glass. The pain didn't fog from the touch, it cleared. The mist peeled away in a perfect circle, and through it I saw what lay behind him. Not the riverbank. Not Darsmouth. A gray expanse, flat and endless, where sound curled into itself like smoke. Then the glass cracked. We ran. The air outside the conservatory felt wrong, thinner, muffled. Streetlights flickered without hum, and every footstep faded too quickly, as if the ground were absorbing noise. The city had grown porous. We stopped under a bridge, trying to catch our breath. Amelia clutched the tape recorder to her chest. "It's following us," she said. "Every time we speak, it learns where we are. That's why Calder painted in silence." "Then how did he finish?" She hesitated. "He didn't. The fire wasn't an accident. He tried to burn it before it burned through." A soft hiss interrupted her, static rising from the recorder. The tape began to spin on its own. "Pierce," said a voice. My voice. Amelia's eyes widened. "It's recording us." I reached to turn it off, but the button jammed. The speaker whined, louder now, the tone sharp enough to ache in my jaw. And in that pitch, I could see something moving, lines forming, shapes cutting across the air, outlines of canvases that weren't there moments ago. "Don't speak," Amelia whispered. "It draws what it hears." But the sound had already become a pattern, swirling gray strokes painting themselves in midair. Within seconds, an archway took form before us, stretching up from the pavement, shimmering like oil. On the other side, only stillness. The tape clicked. "Stillness listens," my recorded voice said. We didn't enter the archway that night. But by dawn, Darsmouth had changed again. The river had gone silent. Newspapers lay in the streets but didn't rustle. Birds perched without sound or shadow. And along the building's walls, faint brushstrokes shimmered where there had been none before, gray impressions of doors, windows, people. It was painting us. Layer by layer. Amelia and I left the city limits that afternoon, driving until the skyline dissolved into fog. She barely spoke, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. I kept the tape in my coat pocket, feeling the faint vibration of its spinning reels. When we finally stopped for fuel, the attendant didn't speak. He just stared at us, face pale and unmoving. Behind him, the shop radio played silence, steady, perfect, unbroken. "Pierce," Amelia said, voice thin. "Look!" Across the windshield, condensation had formed from our breath. But it wasn't fog. It was handwriting. "We hear you." And beneath it, a smear, like a brush dragged across wet paint. That night, while Amelia slept in the passenger seat, I took the tape recorder from my pocket and turned it over. Its reels spun even without power. The tape was almost transparent now. I held it to the dim light and saw faint shapes moving within the film, faces half-formed, shifting, trying to remember expression. One of them looked like Calder. One of them looked like me. And in the silence that followed, a thought surfaced, quiet and cold. Maybe Calder hadn't captured the silence. Maybe it had captured him, and now it was finishing the painting through us. We reached the coast by morning. The road ended where the cliffs began, black rock dropping into mist, waves rolling below in silence so thick I could feel it pressing against my skin. The horizon was gone. Even the sea had stopped making sound. Amelia stood beside me, wind in her hair, her eyes fixed on the emptiness ahead. "It's spreading faster now," she said. "Darsmouth is gone." I didn't ask how she knew. We hadn't seen another car for hours. The radio transmitted nothing but the faint pulse of static, like the slow breath of something alive beneath the noise. I opened the glove compartment and took out the tape. It was nearly transparent now, the edges flaking away like ash. Yet inside it, movement remained, a faint shimmer, like figures caught behind glass. "What happens if we destroy it?" I asked. Amelia shook her head. "It's not in the tape, Pierce. It's in us. Every time we heard it, it took something. Memory, voice, color. You can't burn what's already inside." Her voice broke. "I think Calder tried. That's why the fire didn't stop it. It just made it hungrier." I turned toward the ocean. If silence wants to finish the painting, I said slowly, maybe we can finish it first. We found an abandoned chapel a few miles inland, stone walls overtaken by moss, roof half collapsed. Inside, shafts of cold light cut through the air like frozen water. The altar was gone, replaced by a wide wooden table covered in dust. We set the tape recorder on it. Amelia placed her notebook beside it, open to a sketch she'd made weeks before, Calder's last painting, Stillness No. 13, recreated from memory. But this version was incomplete, the final quadrant blank. We'll give it what it wants, she said. A boundary. She took a brush from her satchel, dipped it into the ink she'd brought, and began to paint over the sketch. Her strokes were precise, trembling only when she inhaled. As she worked, the air thickened. The silence grew deeper, heavier, until it began to hum through the stone. I stepped back, watching the canvas breathe. Every brushstroke seemed to move on its own, twisting like smoke underwater. Amelia, I said quietly, it's answering you. She didn't stop. Good. Let it. Her voice faded beneath the weight of the quiet. The tape recorder clicked. Pierce, it whispered, but the voice was wrong, deeper, hollow. Finish it. I reached for the brush. My fingers trembled as I added the final line to the painting, a single curve that closed the last empty space. The moment the brush touched paper, everything stopped. No breath, no heartbeat, no sound at all. Then came the echo. It wasn't noise, it was everything we'd ever heard rushing back at once. Voices, thunder, laughter, glass shattering, water boiling, footsteps, whispers, a city's worth of memory compressed into a single moment. And beneath it, Calder's voice. Every silence is a doorway. You have to decide which side you belong on. When the sound faded, the chapel was empty. The painting lay on the table, finished. Its surface was perfectly still, so still it seemed to bend light. Inside the paint, faint shapes swam like reflections beneath ice. Amelia's notebook was gone. So was she. Only her brush remained, resting across the lower frame, a thin streak of gray still wet at its tip. I looked into the painting and saw the ocean again, but this time, it was moving. Waves rose and fell without sound, and along the shore, two figures stood, one holding a notebook, the other a tape recorder. They turned toward me. The glass of the frame trembled. I closed my eyes. They found me 3 days later, wandering along the cliffs. No car, no tape recorder, no Amelia. The doctors said I was in shock. They asked about the city, why Dartmouth's streets were empty, why the museum had sealed itself. I told them it was all gone. They said that wasn't possible. When I was released, I went back to the museum. The boards had been removed, the halls restored. But the gallery where Calder's painting once hung was bare. A new piece hung in its place, a recent edition, unsigned. It showed two people standing by the sea, facing the horizon. The title read, The Painter of Silence. As I stared, a faint vibration filled the air behind me, soft, patient, like breath waiting to become sound. I turned toward it, but there was nothing. Just the stillness. And somewhere inside it, a voice I almost recognized whispered, Finish it. The silence closed in again, warm, absolute, endless. And this time, I didn't fight it.